Sound check 1 2 3. Sound check 1 2 3.
Welcome, everyone. As we have quorum present for today's meeting, I'd like to call this meeting of the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee to order. Just a reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during our committee meetings. We're going to go through our attendance. As I go through the names, if I can just everyone acknowledge that they're present. Councillor Kretsch.
I'm present.
Karen sends her regrets. Graham Carroll. I see Graham.
Present.
Andrew Douglas.
Present.
Lynn Lundstedt. Present. Andy McLaren.
Present.
Stefan Spalnick sends his regrets as well. Okay. We'll now move on to the approval of our agenda. May I please have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as presented?
I see Lynn and Councillor Kretsch.
And as we move forward, are there any amendments from the committee members to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to our vote. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Item 4 is our declarations of interest. Are there any declarations today? Go ahead, Graham.
I just want to state we have a disqualifying conflict with Megan Thompson as we're on the local organizing committee with her.
And I would share that same conflict of interest. We'll now move on to item 5 is our approval of minutes of the previous meeting. We have before us the meeting notes of January 16th, 2026. May I please have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes as presented?
I see Lynn and Graham.
Is there any discussion on the meeting minutes? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. Is there anyone opposed? Carried. Item 6 is our delegations. Before we begin our delegations for today, members are just reminded that questions for the delegations are just for clarification purposes only and not for debate. And a note to our delegates, you will have 5 minutes to complete your delegation. We have before us item 6.1, which is delegations respecting item 8.1, report PD 26050, which is the notice of intention to demolish the building located at 342 Wilson Street East, Ancaster, being non-designated property listed on the Hamilton Heritage Register, Ward 12. So we'll first call Sam Esposto, Division of Sam Esposto Architect, Inc. I don't believe they're present at the moment, so we'll move on to our second delegate and we'll come back to our first. We have Megan Hobson, Hobson Built Heritage.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome, Megan. So you'll have 5 minutes to complete your delegation.
Okay, I just thought I would give everybody an overview. I did the heritage impact assessment for this property. So here's I had Jonathan D., who's a structural engineer and a CAP certified member, to look at the condition, just to clarify for everybody what kind of condition the building was in. It's actually, he determined it to be hazardous inside. He was able to get in and look in most areas. I didn't go in, but I have his photographs, and that was because of the condition. So the building is a frame building that's got aluminum siding on it now. It sits right in the village core. You can see it's beside the old fire hall that's municipally owned, and then there's commercial properties on the other side, on the Purple Ponies right beside it there. It sits very close to the road, as you can see. Next slide, please. If I could have the next slide. Right.
There's just a bit of
Sorry.
a lag, Megan. She'll just have to wait a second.
Oh, okay. So we'll go back to the side view. Right. So there we go from the side. So you can see it's this 1.5 story form, sort of got a Gothic revival look to it, but it's missing all of its sort of decorative elements. And then it's just got this sort of 1 story section at the back. The roof is in really poor condition. There was some sagging and some broken wood structural components that Jonathan could see inside. You can see just on the back dormer there's a little bit of the original wood board and batten, which may or may not be underneath the rest of the siding. We don't know. Next slide, please. And I just wanted to show you the interior because unfortunately there has been a lot of water damage. Historic, let's just look at what it used to look like. So this is what it looked like around 1900. And as you can see, the form that's there now pretty much corresponds to what was built originally, but the porches are gone, of course. Next slide, please. And then a slightly more recent photo that shows it when it still had all the decorative features. And so I talked about, used this to talk about features that were missing. So the 2 brick chimneys on the roof are gone. The decorative barge boards is all gone. The wood windows and doors are either gone or severely damaged. And you'll see that in some of the photos. Right now they're boarded up, but we could see them from the inside. And the wood porches, of course, are gone as well. And the board and batten siding, we're assuming is probably not in great condition and may not. Often when they put on siding, they take the battens off, for example. So we're not expecting to find much underneath there. Next slide, please. So unfortunately, this is the condition of the interior. There's been extensive water damage and vandalism. So the staircase, you can see somebody has smashed all of the components of the stairs, and doors and windows have been smashed as well. The water damage you can see from parts of the ceiling that has collapsed in virtually every room. The next slide, please. And so there are even hazardous conditions like mold, and there's also animal droppings that were found everywhere. So animals have been getting in, people have been getting in, water has been getting in. So these pictures were taken last winter, and so it's been a whole year since then with further decay, no doubt. Next slide, please. Those are on the first floor. And then upstairs, you can see mold, saturated materials, collapsed plaster, and then some of the broken rafters in the roof. And then they've been kind of supported with some sort of pieces of wood propping them up. So not very, very poor condition. Next slide, please. The history of the house is it's associated with boot and shoemakers, James Wilson, and then his 2 sons were boot and shoemakers in the village in the 19th and early 20th century. They are not related to the James Wilson who's the miller who founded the mills in the area, and Wilson Street is named after. They're no relation as far as I can tell, and it's a different time period. Then it's in the village core, as I said, so there's a lot of historic buildings in the core. Some of them have been designated, others are still on the register, and then others still that remain on the inventory. And so then, of course, there's design guidelines for new development. So part of the consideration for this was what type of development was going to go in place of the house. And so the architects have looked around in the area to get cues from other buildings, and they've integrated that into their design for the new development. Next slide, please. So the design guidelines identify different typologies that are typical of the village core area, and there's design guidelines that go with each typology, and that was evaluated in my heritage impact assessment. Next slide, please. So here's the development, and you can see it as it's a 2.5, or you could call it a 2.5 or a 3-story. So the 3rd story is integrated into the roof line. They've taken a lot of cues from design elements in the village, gables, dormers, traditional window types with a sill and multi-pane design. And then they've integrated a lot of contemporary elements as well. In terms of the glazing, particularly for the commercial space on the lower level. The development is going to have commercial space on the ground floor. So that's the glazed area to the left. In the center is an entrance to a parking garage. So there will be parking for 17 cars contained within the development to alleviate any issues with parking. And then to the right, and underneath the stone gable, would be the entrance to the residential units. So there's a stairwell and a lobby in there, and then you go up to the residential units. There'll be 17 units can be accommodated in the building. And it fills most of the lot, but there is a 7.5 meter setback allowed at the back where there's outdoor amenity space. So bringing in materials, obviously the stone and brick, and then mixing that with some contemporary materials, a little bit of landscaping in the front setback. So they've kind of aligned it with the established setbacks on the street, so it fits in, and the established heights. And of course, the horizontal datum lines. Next slide, please. The architects are also here today, and they can answer any questions that you have about the design and materials and things like that. Here are the floor plans, and you can see the parking in blue there's a ramp that'll go down, be slightly below grade. And then the commercial space is the yellow. And that ties in with the other commercial properties on Wilson Street. And then the residential on the 2 floors above in purple. And then at the back, the gray areas, that's the outdoor amenity space and allows a setback from the residential properties that back onto that back part. Next slide, please. Here are the elevations for the side, front, and back. And the materials are listed there. I believe they've been working with staff on the design and the material choices. Next slide, please. So I recommended that it was consistent with, well, first of all, I think it's on the next page, so I'll just deal with the development first. I felt the new development was complementary to the village character, to the adjacent heritage properties. I didn't have any concerns. The massing, scale, setback, height, all of those things seem to fit in, the materiality. I did suggest that they work with staff just to review the final material selections to make sure that the stone and the brick and the other materials are complementary to the local brick and the buildings in brick and stone that's found in the village, in the historic buildings. Next page, there's a few other recommendations. So I did not recommend a designation, although it has some historic interest and it has contextual interest as a kind of a shoemaker's store and residence, and is related to the historic village. Because of the condition, it really doesn't convey those values very well. And it's the minimum threshold for designation. So given the condition and the loss of original features, I did not recommend designation. Staff have supported that conclusion as well. I do always like to encourage owners to salvage materials if they can. It has pretty low potential for salvage, so I'm not making that a strong sort of requirement. I'm just encouraging that they do take a look at that after they remove all the siding and see what kind of condition is under there. But like I said, we're not expecting much sound material to be underneath there because of the condition. And also suggested that a little more attention be given to the fact that it was the Wilson shoemaker family, 2 generations that worked in the village. And so maybe they could hang some historic photos or have some information about that in the new development as a kind of a commemorative piece. Again, that was a suggestion to the applicant. So that concludes my presentation, and I don't know if the architects are here now, but they also are here if you have any questions, but I'll open it up to questions to myself first if you'd like.
So through the chair, there are 2 separate delegations. So if we can keep questions to Megan first, and then we'll move on to the second delegate after that.
Okay, thanks.
So Andrew, you have a question?
Hello, through the chair. I didn't see it in the HIA, but could you tell me how long the current owner has owned the property?
I think that the architects probably may be able to answer that when you speak to them, because they've worked more closely with the owner.
Okay, I can ask then.
Do we have other questions for Megan? Seeing none. Thank you, Megan. So we're going to move on to our second delegate, which is Sam Esposito from Esposito Architects, Inc. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's afternoon now. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stan Esposito,
So
the
just a
architect
reminder,
for the project.
just a reminder, you have
Oh,
5
sorry.
minutes for your delegation. Okay.
No, that's fine. I mean, Megan's done a wonderful job in giving us an overview and synopsis on the project, on the existing condition of the building and the proposed development. I don't have much more to add. I can tell you from the gentleman who just asked the question that the owners own this property. I don't have the exact timeline, but I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 years. And it was abandoned, from what he understands, about 7 or 8 years before that, at least, that they could go back and check. So it has sat empty for a sizable amount of time. But when he bought the building, he said it was in very poor condition and has obviously continued to deteriorate over time. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions. It is a 2.5-story, 3-story development, which does fit in. We tried to work within the confines of the existing zoning as much as possible. We have not tried to push the envelope in terms of height. The owner is very respectful, lives in Ancaster, is a local and well-respected physician who intends to live in a portion of this building in his retirement years, and is very interested in providing a well-built and a development represents the character of the existing buildings in the neighborhood by utilizing a number of the different materials that can be found in some of those buildings, and we've done extensive work to ensure that we've incorporated a number of those elements into the design of the building. So yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, Megan did a great job introducing the project, so I'm happy to take any questions that you may have, or anybody in the committee may have.
Thank you, Sam. Do we have any questions for our delegate? Seeing none. Thank you very much for that presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing that there's no further questions, may I please have a mover and a seconder to receive the delegations?
I see Andrew and Lynn.
And as we move to vote, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. We'll now move on to items 7 for items for information. May I please have a mover and a seconder to receive the items of information? We have before us items 7.1 to 7.3.
I see Andrew and Graham.
And is there any discussion on any of these items? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Item 8 is our items for consideration. We now have before us item 8.1, which is PED 26050, the notice of intention to demolish the building located at 342 Wilson Street East in Ancaster, being a non-designated property listed on the Municipal Heritage Register PED 26050, Ward 12. So may I have a mover and a seconder to put the report on the floor?
I see Lynn and Andrew.
Okay. I would now like to call upon Alyssa Golden, Cultural Heritage Program Lead, to provide an introduction for this item.
Hi, folks. So building off of the helpful sort of overview provided by the delegates, just summarizing the staff report in front of you today, it does address the notice of intention to demolish this listed property. It was listed on the register in 2020 as a part of a batch listing of the village core in Ancaster. There's also, as you've heard, a conditionally approved site plan application related to redevelopment of the site, which does require demolition of the structure. And the staff report does recommend that although the existing building does have heritage interest, it has been modified and retains very few heritage features and materials, and is also in a deteriorated state, as is documented in the HIA and attached building condition assessment. And therefore, staff do not recommend designation of the property in response to the notice, and instead recommend that it be received and that the property be removed from the register.
Thank you, Alyssa. So we have before us those recommendations. Are there any questions from the committee? Andrew and Lin?
Yeah, I agree with the report. My question is really around, is it possible to have a more detailed not conservation plan, a more detailed, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm just forgetting. Plan for commemoration, a commemoration plan attached to this, because, you know, clearly this may have been something that was worthy of designation at some point in time. There is enough there as far as the history goes to have some proper commemoration built into this, I think would be very important.
Through the chair, so as a part of this process under the Heritage Act, we're not able to impose any conditions as a part of this notice being considered. However, there is the active site plan application. It is already conditionally approved. But as Megan pointed out in her delegation and outlined in the Heritage Impact Assessment attached to the notice, there is a discussion of potential commemoration. Right now, there isn't a condition for that, but staff would be happy to work with the applicant and see what opportunities there are. This is obviously very close to the street in a very prominent historic village area. So there would be an opportunity, I think, for commemoration within the public right-of-way, but we'd have to take a look at the design, looking at sort of the amount of glazing. I'm not sure if there's an opportunity for on-building commemoration, but certainly something that we could take back and work with the applicant on to see if we can integrate that.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Through the chair, this is just a general comment. It's another building that is demolition by neglect, and it seems to be getting more and more prevalent, and especially Ancaster, for some reason, seems to be heavily hit. And I just, like I said, it's just a shame that so many of our buildings are on the register or on the inventory and are going to be demolished because they're disintegrating. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Lynn. Are there any further questions? Oh, Councillor Crouch.
Yeah, I just briefly wanted to respond to what Lynn said. I don't disagree that we are seeing demolition by neglect happening. I think it's important to say this isn't a recent case of that. It's not like it happened overnight. I think one thing that's been really helpful about the way that the city is now approaching issues with demolition by neglect is we're hearing about them much more clearly. We're taking proactive action around situations where buildings are dangerous. And we're not sort of just saying, well, and gesturing vaguely in the direction of a heritage building, right? So I'm grateful at least for being much more precise about what these issues are, making sure documentation is here, we're coming to the planning committee and making sure people have a chance to weigh in on these issues, because until we start shedding more light on them and having the conversations more regularly, right, it tends to be a frustration for people in general. So I'm just grateful that we're getting detail, we're changing programs. I have something else to share about that later in the meeting, but not for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Crouch. Any other questions? Seeing none, if not, we will move to vote to approve the recommendations contained within the report. As we move to that vote, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. We now move on to our general information, item 11. So we have before us 11.1 is our Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee's introduction to the Municipal Law Enforcement Section, Licensing and Bylaw Services Division. So I'd call upon Alyssa Golden, Cultural Heritage Program Lead, to provide an introduction for this item.
Hi again, folks. So the next two items on the agenda, I just want to briefly introduce 11.1, 11.2. As this committee will remember, we've provided some updates on the report back from staff, a couple of report backs, and the most recent one just at the start of this year in relation to the follow-up of the Gore building collapse and the ongoing collaboration between municipal law enforcement, building inspections, and heritage staff moving forward. Committed to as a part of that most recent report back is that our colleagues from MLE and building inspections would attend Heritage Committee on a quarterly basis to better provide communication to this committee as well as the improved communication with staff. So this would be the first formal meeting that they're attending with us, and staff had recommended that they provide just a brief introduction to their sections and the work that they do, and then answer any questions the committee might have. Moving forward, we would let the committee know which meetings that they're attending in case there's specific questions that we could provide them in advance in preparation for anything the committee might want to discuss with them while they're attending.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the invite. My name is Ian Ferguson. I'm the supervisor of enforcement for municipal law enforcement. Part of my duties also is to oversee the vacant building section. Currently we have 2.5 officers that look to the vacant building section, and we're looking at possibly getting a full-time officer at some point, which would be beneficial as it's become quite a busy area in our section. As for me, I've been working with the city for in 28 years, and 22 of that I've been in bylaw enforcement. And as of last May, I've been the permanent supervisor for municipal law enforcement. Just to give you a little bit of background of myself. I just have a little presentation just to show you what we do as officers, what we look for vacant buildings, and I'll just present that to you right now. Okay. Sorry about that.
You play it first, and then you want to share it.
Okay.
I'll go back here. And
Oh. Okay, great. So again, this is the vacant building section under bylaw 17-127. So as a vacant building, as per the bylaw, is defined as a building that has been boarded with plywood or metal, 25% or more of openings, that has one or more utilities disconnected, which is usually gas or hydro. It is not capable of being occupied. But also, just because a building isn't occupied doesn't mean it is considered vacant. If an owner decides that they wish to live without utilities, they can. That does not apply to anyone renting the property. And what we look for as well in gas meters, the officers usually check to see if a gas meter is connected. Usually that's involving looking at the valve, which if the valve is downward, it's usually disconnected. If it's horizontal, it usually is connected. Also checking the hydrometers, blue meaning that the hydro is connected, as well as green. And yellow, it usually means that the hydro is connected. If we see a red tag, it usually means it's disconnected or very low usage, which gives us the determination that it's more than likely a vacant building. Also, in some cases, the hydro meter has been removed completely, and we look at that as well. As for the gas meter, as I say, we look for the valve. We check to see if the valve is basically up and down, so meaning that it's open and that you're able to use. And if it is closed and disconnected, it's usually horizontal. And also there are times when the gas meter itself has been disconnected and taken away. Just some of the more prevalent items that we look for a vacant building are gas and hydro, just to give you an idea. So as an officer, what we perform when we get a complaint is we do a search of the property. We search for the owner of the property. City of Hamilton properties are exempt. We attend the property to determine if it is a vacant building, and we request and mail a vacant building registration package. After the package has been sent out, we do return to the property after 30 days, and then we decide if it has not been registered, we haven't received any word that it has been registered, then we will begin enforcement on that property. We will attend on a biweekly basis and issue administration penalty notices as well as fees for service for failing to register. And we will address any property standards concerns, as well as yard maintenance, snow, ice, zoning issues, that sort of thing. And this is just an example of the vacant building registration package that we send out, as well as fees for service, so that the owner is aware what type of penalties are included if the property has not been registered. We work with a few different sections and departments within the city. That includes the building department, the heritage department, tax department, as well as utilities, electric utilities, Hydro One, Enbridge. We work with the licensing department, as well as property owners, property management, and we work with complainants. We do what we can to obtain compliance. That is what we like to see. But of course, if we don't, then we continue with the enforcement process. Just to give you some stats that we've had from last year, we had 224 unregistered fees for inspection for last year, which totaled $124,544, as well as our 122 registered properties, renewals and registrations that were paid last year, $156,238.65. We did issue 151 orders to comply last year, and that was mostly with property standards as well as any heritage issues. The fees for service that were issued last year totaled to $201,776. We also were able to have 47 vacant buildings newly registered for last year, which is something we'd like to see. Contractor requests work. Last year we had approximately 76 contractor requests that we performed, as well as 85,761.81 in invoice work that was completed last year. Okay, and before we get to any questions, we just want to make it clear that yes, we do have 2 full-time officers, 1 part-time officer currently that deal with vacant buildings, but they also deal with other sections within the municipal bylaw. So we can't always, we try our best to attend as quick as we can, but they are doing other duties as well. So we do make the best of what we have with our 2.5 officers. Any questions?
Thank you, and that was a great presentation. I think, Andrew, you've got a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, the rules that are in place, are they current rule or sorry, how long, I guess, have they been in place? Are they like new to, trying to address these issues, or are they the rules that have been around for a long time?
Yeah, they've been in place for a number of years prior.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if someone, because you said 150 some odd orders to comply, out of those, how many people aren't complying? And out of that, what's the process for dealing with them at that point?
Yeah, that is involving orders that we've had to send to contractor, which means non-compliance. We do have I would say more non-compliance currently than we do compliance, but we do our best to obtain compliance through ownership. But that was referring to our contractors that we've had to send in. So that was what we were able to obtain from our contractor.
Go ahead, Alyssa.
Through the chair, and just to maybe clarify further on that, there's a difference between orders that are issued that aren't appealed and then you're able to enforce versus orders that are appealed and then they have to go through the process of going to the Proper Standards Committee and being dealt with that way.
Did you have anything further, Andrew?
I'll wait for the next presentation.
Oh, okay, sounds good. Do we have any other questions, Councillor?
No questions, just a comment. I mean, I'll say this as a politician because I can say it. I think I heard something very careful that Ian said. We're working to try and get the position up to a full-time position. Ultimately, that decision is a council decision made during the budget process, right? So I want to be really clear about the accountability for that. The accountability for adding new staff to the organization is a council accountability. And I'll just say that we hear routinely through the budget process every year, oh no, we're thinking of hiring another person to do this work, to expand the work that's being done. We have mayoral directives coming forward saying slash these things. So those do have an impact on us trying to make this hiring happening. And frankly, we've made amazing progress in the terms of this term of council, in terms of bringing more people into the bylaw division as a whole. So municipal law enforcement didn't have enough people to address, for instance, the 200,000 tenants that exist in the city didn't have enough officers to deal with the complaints that were coming in at that volume. So they have to triage, do what they could, the best they could do in the day, get through things as quickly as they could. Sometimes issues would come and go in the time it was being responded to because there weren't enough people to address them. So when there's a balance across the whole system, right? When one person's calling in saying a dog did something, another person's calling in saying weeds are doing something, right? And then a person's calling in saying my heat isn't working, right? How do you get the person who may be in Ancaster downtown to deal with the heat issue in a reasonable time if you have only one person working at that time? So I just want to say that that's not on city staff at all. That's on council's past decisions, which I'm hopefully are being corrected as time goes forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions for our presenter? Seeing none, if there's no other discussion, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive that presentation?
I see Lynn and Andy.
And as we move to vote, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. And we move on to item 11.2. So we welcome Bob Nuttall, Manager of Building Inspections, Building Division, and Chris Atkinson, Supervisor, Building Inspections, Building Division.
So Bob's absent. So I'm Chris Atkinson, Supervisor of Inspections with the City Hamilton Building Division. I've been with the city for just my 25th year. I'm a supervisor of a team that does enforcement for building code related enforcement, specifically construction no permit, but overall we also do unsafe buildings. So when it comes to heritage properties, our involvement in the building division is either when we're issuing permits, and we make sure that heritage permits are obtained prior to issuance of any building permits, or if there's an unsafe complaint and then it happens to also be a heritage property, then we would involve the heritage team through the heritage protocol. Our involvement in the Blitz was to help municipal law in any situations that there might have been unsafe conditions, and then we would assess that at that time. So I don't have a big presentation because our involvement was very, very minimal overall, and it's legislated by the Building Code Act.
Do we have any questions for Chris? Andrew?
Some generic questions, but about just the pros and whole. The first thing, just have we actually seen the report for the report that was supposed to be coming forward about how the Gore building falling down and recommendations about that?
Thanks, Alyssa. Through the chair, Ken Coit, Director of Urban Design. That report went directly to Planning Committee, and we gave a verbal update on it last meeting. So that report's available online. I believe that's the second of two reports, and a third report on the ongoing vacant building and managing that is scheduled for Q1 2027. So we can provide those to you, Andrew, if you want.
Yeah, that'd be great. And then the second thing, were there any actual teeth that came out of that as far as enforcement goes to make sure that these things aren't falling down anymore?
I'll take that one. As a member of this committee and the planning committee, and save Ken from having to answer it. Yes, at the end of that report on the last page, there's a summary of all the things that are being done. So you can read that, and then the report gives all those things in detail. That being said, I asked the same question at the planning committee. I was concerned that essentially, right, if like summarizing a little bit of what was said in terms of the kinds of things that are done, we as a city are seeking compliance a lot. Right? And then if there's an appeal, we have to go through a process of orders. And so that's the methodology a lot of cities use in terms of how to address these issues. We do have some ways under the law to be more proactive And I would say, from my perspective, a little bit more assertive in terms of how we approach this process. Now, the law does say X, Y, Z, you can't do certain things, but we do have rights, for instance, basically under the law, that if there's a health and safety concern or a serious kind of concern of risk of falling, we can take more emergency measures to address issues. So we don't have to wait as long as we have been waiting in the past. And the report addresses those gaps, right? I would say to you, part of it is that we don't have an engineer of record. And I'm using that term really broadly. We don't have an engineer on staff here full-time who's paid to do that, though contemplating that means thinking about what's that person doing when there's not an activity for them to be up to. So that's a mindful thing to be thinking about. We can, though, contract out some of those services in a more directed way. So being more specific about it, more prescriptive about it, and the building department can take certain actions if there's situations. For instance, 12 to 24 hours before the buildings collapsed, while I was standing right in front of them, there was obviously an issue with the one wall that was there on the left-hand side as you faced it, that many people observed who were within the group that I was with saying, hey, that looks like it's newer or looks like it's unsafe and maybe an issue. We had a mechanism at the time to report that directly and get that addressed. Now, it wouldn't have made a difference anyways because the building collapsed within the next 12 to 24 hours. And so that maybe not have helped in that situation. But there are ways for us to have a more articulated process. For instance, exactly who gets contacted, exactly what happens with that information, how does it get tracked up, and moving away from, I said, ownership compliance to the public trust. So I have a motion coming forward in March probably to the planning committee that'll be exploring what can we do, how can we add more teeth to this, what exactly should we be doing as a city to get more accountability, and then some of those things would come back to the Heritage Committee in terms of what the steps are, what we're doing, right? But yeah, it is tough. It's an area where most cities have a compliance-based approach, and that compliance tends to be, as far as I'm concerned, again, I'm saying this as a politician, too lenient. Right? And we can take extra measures under the law. We just haven't been taking those measures. So my motion is going to say, let's do it. Let's take those measures. Let's make this a little bit more aggressive, and let's come up with a way to address these issues before they become a problem. Likely there'll be staffing implications for council, right? So likely we're going to have to look at either hiring more consultants to help us with this work or hiring an engineer of record. As I said earlier, right, council makes those decisions. We'll probably need people to be advocating in favor of making those changes in the next budget or beforehand so that they happen and talking about why they're important. I think the public generally is on the same page. We all want to protect significant heritage buildings from demolition by neglect. So I don't think we're going to have a problem getting advocacy around that, but there'll be a moment when that comes forward, and I'll let you know what it is.
Thank you, Councillor. Alyssa?
And through the chair, to your question, Andrew, in terms of the specifics in the report, it did speak to commitment to continuing the more collaborative conversation between the sections, so having regular meetings throughout the year, as well as, although we have worked effectively together, there's been changeover in staff and recognition that through the Blitz process that we undertook last year collaboratively, that there was a need for a more standard protocol in terms of how the vacant building officers conduct their work, confirm screening of whether it's a heritage property or not. So that work is also ongoing in terms of updating standard operating procedures, and staff will also be looking to attend future meetings and conduct training with the team in terms of understanding the ins and outs of that process and working with our team if it is a designated or listed property and what might need to go into an order if it's going to be issued.
Thank you, Alyssa. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation?
I see Councillor Crutch.
And Andy.
And Andy.
And as we move to vote, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. And thank you both for all the work that you're doing for vacant properties. We'll move on to our item 11.3, which is an update on the Hamilton Heritage Day celebration being held on February 21st, 2026. So I can just provide a really brief update. Tomorrow, well, first of all, celebrating Ontario Heritage Week this week. Tomorrow there is a special celebration that's going to be taking place at the Dundurn Coach House. It's being put on by the city, and that'll be from 12 till 2. So we've been invited as the Municipal Heritage Committee to make a presentation. So there's going to be members of staff, so Alyssa and Scott and then myself, We're going to be doing a little introduction and update to the attendees, just from the Municipal Heritage side of things. But they're also going to be having an update from the Hamilton Wentworth Heritage Association, an update from the Indigenous Relations team, and then presentations on the Hamilton Children's Museum and what they're doing to move forward. The Ontario Deaf Foundation is celebrating their 25th anniversary, so they're going to be making a presentation. And then Meredith Leonard is going to be doing the Junos and the City of Music. And there'll be refreshments and coffee break. And so it's a special day to celebrate heritage in Hamilton. So again, that's tomorrow at the Dundurn Coach House, 12 till 2. Is there any discussion, Councillor?
Yeah, what time are you presenting?
So we are the second item after 12 o'clock. So
Okay,
by
thank
about
you.
12:15.
I have several conflicting events. I'll try and come, but yeah, good to know the exact time. Thank you.
Yeah, by about 12:15, we should probably be presenting. All right, any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive that update?
I see Lynn and Councillor Kretsch.
And is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Under general information, 11.4, we have our Heritage Buildings and Landscape Watch List. So before we do reports, is there any additions to the list that anyone would like to make? Seeing none, is there any removals to the property list? And now, do we have any updates? Would anyone like to make an update? Councillor, do we have, we'll get a speakers list started. Is there anyone else that would like to give an update today? Okay, go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, I just wondered if Alyssa could report back on the items I raised at the last meeting. I know she has a list.
Thanks, for sure. Through the chair, please let me know if I missed any, but I think I have them all listed here. In terms of 134 Cannon Street East, Cannon Knitting Mills, so my understanding, and perhaps staff here with us today could correct if I have any other updates since then. But in terms of the outstanding orders, in terms of municipal law enforcement and building inspections, that work and conversation is still ongoing. There was the initial stabilization, as the councillor had provided updates for at last month's meeting. And right now we are working with a qualified heritage engineer to work on a plan for more substantial structural repairs that are necessary and what that will look like. So that work is still ongoing. And maybe Chris, if I got anything wrong, please correct me.
No, that's correct. The one add is that we are looking for our contractor to get quotes on stabilization and what could be partial demolition or full demolition based on what the engineer comes back with. But we're looking at that right now. We're waiting for that right now.
Thanks. I mean, you may not have the answer for this question. It's probably likely slightly unfair. So just say you don't know, it's fine with me. But I think what's happening, if I understand it, is as we move these things from a non-compliance place to we need to get this work done to stabilize this place, we're getting to a point with this building where the cost benefit analysis around that is questionable. We're getting to the point where adding things to the tax roll to recoup the costs is taking the city 3, 6, 9 years in those 3-year cycles to recoup any of those funds. And so ultimately, these are problems that if, for instance, the owner of the property was to go into some type of receivership, if there were other kinds of issues, the city may not see these things recouped, and there may be a point or tipping point that's relatively close to the building being in a condition where, at least parts of it for sure, where structurally it's unsound. So like, where are we in that kind of journey in terms of like making that level of an assessment? Like, I think what the community would say and what the community has said to me is we're putting good money after bad. What the other members in the community have said to me is it's very important to protect this heritage asset. So we're trying to maintain and balance these two things, but I'm just mindful of the fact that the property continues to deteriorate. So maybe Ken, you could help with that, or somebody else, Melissa.
Yeah, through the chair, I can give an initial intro and then Ken might step in. So that's part of, as Chris mentioned, the work that's currently being done is to understand what those costs are for some of those options for stabilization and whether some partial demolition or reconstruction of the overall complex is required. It's not the entirety of the building that's unsafe. It is a complex of multiple buildings. So this is a bit of a more complicated situation. But that is part of that conversation, is understanding what the current assessed value is, the amount of work that's necessary and what that cost is and how that might impact the assessed value and what we would recoup in terms of if this were to go to a tax sale again, for example.
Yeah, that's my major concern here. I think if we approach this from the perspective that we are paying for it, actually, that will help us make a better decision. Because I think the logic you could find in a situation like this is like, well, we might recoup these from the owner, right, by putting them on the tax roll. We know that's statistically in this situation speaking, not necessarily likely to happen in the way we expect it to normally happen. So I'm just concerned about that. And if we're going to be putting costs up to do something, that just we're mindful of the fact that it's probably the city who's going to pay for them in the end.
Okay, so through the chair, in terms of the other updates the councillor requested at last meeting, 231 Bay Street North. This property was recently at the Committee of Adjustment. Variances for adaptive reuse of the building were approved on February 12th, and staff have been in communication with the agents for the applicant in terms of the scope of work. Primarily, it's interior. There are some minor exterior changes that staff have reviewed and been working closely with the applicants on. Next property is 29 Harriet Street, the Fenton Brush Factory building. Staff reached out to building to confirm there aren't any open or active building permits related to the property. It's currently on the inventory. Staff do have it on our radar, but there has been no action or anything that we're aware of in terms of progress on the site. It was up for sale previously, so staff continue to monitor that property. Next one is 33 Bowen Street. That property is currently on the register, up for sale, and staff have been reviewing that property for designation and do anticipate bringing a recommendation forward in the near future. 124 Walnut Street.
So sorry, can I just back up to 33 Bowen Street to quickly ask you, are you aware, is anyone aware if that's exactly the same parking lot? I don't think it is the same parking lot. I think it's a different parking lot that's attached to 117 Jackson Street East. I ask because the development potential of that piece of property where 33 Bowen Street is pretty obvious to everybody in the neighborhood. A recent decision by the Ontario Land Tribunal permitted heights of more than 30 stories to be permitted in this area above the escarpment for the property at 117 Jackson Street East. So I guess what I'm wondering is, do we know about what's happening with the development there or not, and how this building might be incorporated into it? Because of course it's quite a low building, right? But the density for that area in the downtown secondary plan is quite a lot higher. And so we also know that it's very difficult to incorporate buildings of that stature in with buildings that are much taller. So then just trying to look ahead a little bit.
Through the chair, so there is an active application for the property to the north of 33 Bowen. There was a heritage impact assessment related to that application that looked at appropriate transitions to this building, which, as the councillor mentioned, is smaller in scale. The parking lot that you're referring to is across the street on Catherine. It's not the one immediately south of the building. Okay, and I think I have one more. Correct me if there's anything else. 124 Walnut Street. So that property is subject to a property standards order, which is under appeal. So that process is ongoing in terms of addressing the order that was issued.
Okay, so there's a property standards order, it's under appeal, and it's going through that process because people have a right to appeal. We can't stop that right to appeal. I think the only other thing I was curious about was if there's anything else that you could update the committee about with respect to the James Street Baptist Church property, which I always forget the number on James Street that it is, like 95 or something. 96.
Through the chair and Director of Heritage and Urban Design, there's an active site plan on that. I believe they have an April deadline to get final site plan, and they're actively pursuing that to construct on the site.
If I have that right, based on what you've said and what I know of before, the zoning processes with respect to that land have already been undertaken. We have heritage permits on the property which guide that. And so this is important because this question comes up a fair bit. What's happening? What's happening? The site plan process itself, apart from zoning, is not necessarily a public process. So though, that being said, because this has got heritage permits on it, will we have some visibility on this here? Will it come to the planning committee in some way? Because I know that the site plan process is not necessarily a public process. It's the zoning process that is.
Through the chair, so the current heritage permit approval and conditions do not include a public component. The conditions are to be satisfied back through staff. However, I will note, as a part of the site plan process, there was an updated conservation plan, which our policy and design working group of the Heritage Committee did review and provide comment on. So that is sort of quasi-public process, and there was input on that document, which is also tied to the heritage permit conditions through that site plan process.
So through the chair to speak to the planning process and site plan, Ken Coit, Director of Heritage and Urban Design, we are at the very end. So they have already had approvals on almost everything. They actually had a building permit for part of the work already in place before the ownership switched. So no, there wouldn't be an opportunity to come back. They've completed all that work over the past 10 years, and we're at the very, very end of the approval process right now.
Okay, could I move a motion perhaps just to ask that some presentation be made here at least to when that site plan is done? Like we can't approve it. And I understand the council's already approved the zoning which relates to the site plan and that these are delegated authorities to the planning committee. That notwithstanding, I think it'd be useful for the committee to get a sense of what's coming or what's to happen. Some want something publicly. Again, we don't have the right to overrule what's already been decided about this property, but for information purposes, is there a way to present something here? Because it's a significant heritage asset, that's why I'm asking, and it gets talked about in that spirit.
So through the chair, this committee deals mainly with the heritage, not with the, so there's an integrated approach. We can look at that and get back to whether staff could provide an overview of the project and what the heritage aspects are, and what has been previously approved. But it would be for information only.
Yeah, no, and have someone from planning here also. The reason why I ask this is because I'll just say it to you in a blunt way that I think makes sense. Otherwise, I'm going to have to do it, right? Like it's just an activity that someone has to do, and I'm not qualified to do it. So it'd be better if staff came forward and presented something, and just for public information. And again, information purposes only, but if someone from planning and heritage could come and just make a presentation when you think you're ready to do that, when maybe the site plan has been approved or conditionally approved, I should say. It's usually how it goes. If you could do that, should I put a motion forward to do that? Would that make sense? Okay, I'll move that we have a presentation here so that at least the public have a sense of what's happening in professional terms.
So we have a mover.
For information.
Do we have a seconder for this motion? Andrew?
And sorry, just for clarification, that was for the James Street Baptist Church?
Yep.
So through the chair, could I suggest it's 98 James Street North? And south, whoops, I'm going to be reporting on Jackson Square by mistake. Oh, what was I going to say? The staff provide an overview at time of final site plan approval, because it is conditionally approved now.
Great, that's fine. That way it's all done, it's all sorted, we know exactly what's going to be happening. And if I could say that, be planning and heritage staff, so not just from a heritage perspective. Apparently Ken can wear two hats at the same time, so Ken can do it. Thank you for being two people at once, Ken.
Ken can do anything.
So through the chair, we do have a motion on the floor. So if we could just deal with if there's any questions on that. If not, we can go to a vote. Okay.
Do we have any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote on that motion. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Okay. Do we have any further property updates? No? No further? May I have a mover and a seconder to receive our property updates under 11.4?
I see Councillor Kretsch and Lynn.
And as we move to vote to receive, is there anyone opposed? Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, through the chair, I thought you meant related to Councillor Crutch's updates. Staff do have two more updates.
Oh,
sorry about that.
Yeah, no.
So in terms of 200 Main Street East, staff just wanted to advise, as you might recall, First Pilgrim Church, that recommendation to designate had come through this committee last year, got to planning committee. Then there had been an ask from the congregation at the time to defer the item to allow for them to delegate when it's being considered. So council had referred that back to staff, and staff have been in contact with representatives from the congregation over the last year, and there just has not been a good time for them to actually come back. And more recently, the property is up for sale, and there's been a significant change in the representation on their congregation's board. So given those potential threats of sale and redevelopment, staff have opted to bring that report back through planning committee. So it is on the agenda next week on February 24th. Just wanted to make the committee aware of that. And also in terms of the Beach Canal Lighthouse, staff had the opportunity to meet with representatives from HOPA and the Beach Canal Lighthouse Group earlier this year to discuss their collaboration on ongoing repairs to the cottage. So just wanted to give that update that that work is ongoing and some very positive news in terms of work being undertaken to do repairs to those resources.
That's great. Thank you, Alyssa. Any questions in regards to those property updates? Any further properties to be updated? And you had your mover and seconder. So as we move to vote to receive, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Do we have any staff updates or other business? Seeing none, we will move to adjournment. There being no further business, the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee is now adjourned at 1 o'clock. Our next meeting will be on March 27th at 12 noon. Right. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the weekend.